Everyone at the party heard the explosion, and everyone ran, except her. Emily Carter, 23 years old, invisible in a black uniform, walked back into the flames. Not because she was fearless, but because the man collapsing on that burning floor was the only person who could tell her what happened to her father, the man who vanished 8 years ago and was never spoken of again. She saved his life, and in return, he gave her a truth so devastating, so long buried, it would either destroy her or finally set her free. Welcome to this channel where every story lives at the intersection of power and love. Mafia bosses with hidden consciences, families torn apart by secrets, and the rare extraordinary moments when someone chooses truth over survival. What this story will remind you: justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose mercy even when the world expects fire. If you felt that like this video, leave a comment with one word describing Emily, share it with someone who loves a story with soul, and subscribe because every week we bring you another story that stays with you long after it's over. A sharp November wind sliced across Chicago's North Shore, carrying the scent of Lake Michigan and the threat of an early winter. But inside the Cole mansion, it was nothing but warmth. Golden light from crystal chandeliers washed over marble floors, where the hum of voices blended with classical music from a string quartet near the grand staircase. Emily Carter drifted through the guests with the skill of being invisible in plain sight, her black uniform perfectly pressed and her dark hair in a tight bun. At 23, she was a master at being present but unnoticed, a crucial talent for anyone working in Nathan Cole's world. She topped off champagne flutes, cleared away empty plates, and kept her gaze lowered, even though she missed nothing. "Could we get more champagne?" a woman wearing a diamond necklace asked, barely looking at Emily. "Right away, ma'am." Emily's voice was quiet and professional. She poured with a steady hand, ignoring the slight shake she felt. Something about tonight was off. There was a tension in the air she couldn't quite place, like the heavy quiet just before a storm hits. On the other side of the room, Nathan Cole was holding court by the fireplace. At 39, he drew attention effortlessly. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, and had a presence that dominated any room he entered. People were drawn to him, desperate for a nod of approval and terrified of his displeasure. On paper, his businesses were legitimate, things like construction, real estate, and global trade. But Emily knew, just like everyone else in the room, that his true influence came from the deals made in the shadows. She had been on his household staff for 6 months, just one more anonymous employee. She desperately needed the job, the paycheck, and the access to this world for reasons she kept locked away inside her. Each day she spent in these halls was a reminder of why she was there and what she had to find out. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, suddenly appeared beside her. The worry lines on the older woman's face looked deeper than usual tonight. "Mr. Cole needs fresh coffee in his study. Please take it up right now. He is conducting business. You know how that is. Hurry now." Emily nodded and headed for the kitchen, her mind already picturing the layout. The study was located on the second floor in the east wing, with a view of the gardens. She had polished every surface in there countless times, but never while Nathan was in the middle of a business meeting. The staff had a rule to stay clear during those times. She carefully prepared the coffee tray with a French press, cream, sugar, and his favorite dark roast. The kitchen was a flurry of motion as caterers worked on the next food course. Looking out the window, she noticed more security guards on the property than usual. Something was definitely not right tonight. Emily carried the silver tray up the servants' staircase. The sounds of the party grew faint as she went deeper into the private section of the home. The hallway was silent, with a thick carpet and lined with priceless art she had dusted 100 times but never truly seen. Light was visible from under the study door at the end of the hall. She knocked gently. "Coffee service, Mr. Cole." "Leave it outside," his voice snapped.
He sounded preoccupied. Emily placed the tray on a small table in the hall and started to walk away, but she hesitated for a second. She could hear shouting through the heavy door. It was Nathan and another man she didn't know. The words were hard to make out, but the tone was perfectly clear. It was anger and accusation. Every instinct told her to leave. She understood the rules, but her feet felt glued to the floor. "You think I'm not aware?" The other man's voice grew louder. "Do you think I'm an idiot? I think you need to remember who you're speaking to." Nathan's voice was ice cold, perfectly controlled, and full of menace. Emily finally made herself turn away. Whatever was going on in there was none of her business. She had her own mission here, her own answers to find. Getting caught up in Nathan Cole's immediate troubles would only make things harder. She had just gotten to the staircase when the world suddenly blew apart. The explosion threw her forward, slamming her into the wall and stealing the air from her lungs. A high-pitched ringing screamed in her ears. For a second, she couldn't understand what just happened. One moment, the hallway was completely normal. The next, it was complete chaos. Thick smoke was pouring from the study. Flames began to eat at the wallpaper. The priceless art was now just shattered fragments on the floor. Downstairs, the party erupted into screams. She heard the thunder of footsteps running in every direction. People were yelling, trying to find a way out. Through the ringing in her ears, Emily could hear the fire crackling as it grew, hungry and fast. She needed to run. Her survival instinct was screaming at her to get out. Instead, she found herself staggering toward the study. The door was blown off its hinges, and a wave of intense heat rolled out. The smoke stung her eyes and burned her throat. She covered her mouth with her jacket and forced her way inside. The room was a wreck. Furniture was flipped over and papers were on fire. The window had been completely blown out. The cold November air was now feeding the fire, making the flames leap even higher. And there, by the desk, was Nathan Cole, collapsed on the floor. "Mr. Cole," Emily said, dropping to her knees next to him. A gash on his temple was bleeding down the side of his face. His eyes were barely open and looked blank. "Can you hear me?" He mumbled something she couldn't understand. The fire was moving much faster now, consuming the curtains and devouring the expensive rug. Smoke was quickly filling the room from the ceiling down. Emily grabbed Nathan's arm and tried to lift him, but he weighed twice as much as her and was barely conscious. "You need to help me. Come on. You have to get up." Below, there were more screams and the sound of shattering glass. A man was shouting orders. "Get everyone out! Move! Move! Move!" The security team would be herding people out the front of the house, away from the danger. No one would even consider coming up here. No one would realize Nathan was still inside. "Please," Emily begged, coughing as her lungs burned from the smoke. "I can't lift you alone. Please, get up." Nathan's eyes seemed to focus a little. He stared at her, but there was no recognition or comprehension. Still, some deep instinct to survive must have taken over. He tried to push himself up, and Emily managed to get her shoulder under his arm, taking on as much of his weight as she could. They lurched toward the doorway. Every step was an enormous effort. The heat was now blistering and unbearable. Emily's lungs ached for fresh air. Tears streamed from her eyes, but she kept going, kept pulling Nathan forward one painful step after another. The hallway had become a furnace. The main staircase was now engulfed in flames. That way out was now gone. Emily's thoughts raced. The servants' stairs. They had to get to the servants' stairs. "This way," she choked out, almost carrying Nathan as much as she was dragging him in the other direction. He was a bit more aware now, trying to move his own feet but still relying on her completely. Blood from his head wound dripped down onto her shoulder. The servants' staircase was darker and narrower, and while it was filling with smoke, it wasn't yet on fire. Emily led Nathan down, one slow step at a time. Her legs were trembling from the effort. Her shoulder felt like it was on fire from his weight, but she didn't stop. About halfway down, Nathan lost his footing, and they almost tumbled down the rest of the way. Emily braced herself on the wall, her palms searing against the hot surface. Almost there, just a little more. They stumbled out into the kitchen, where the difference was shocking. There was less smoke and cool air was pouring in from the back door that the staff had used to escape. Emily helped Nathan out into the cold November night. Outside on the back lawn, it was chaos. The staff stood clustered in groups. Some were crying, while others just stared in disbelief at the burning house. In the distance, you could hear approaching sirens. The red and blue lights of emergency vehicles flashed at the far end of the long driveway. Emily eased Nathan down onto the grass, a safe distance from the mansion. She collapsed right next to him, desperate for air and coughing hard. Her throat felt completely raw. Everything ached. "Emily!" Mrs. Chen cried out, her face ghostly white with shock. "What were you? How did you—" "He was in the study," Emily said between coughs. "Someone had to get him." "You went back inside," Mrs. Chen said, looking at her as if she were crazy. "You actually went back into that fire." More people started to gather around them. The security team was finally starting to get organized. One of them, a tall man with sharp eyes named Marcus, who was Nathan's head of security, came through the crowd. He was the type of man who saw everything. "Mr. Cole." Marcus knelt by Nathan's side, checking his pulse and looking at the gash on his head. Then his eyes shifted to Emily. He truly looked at her, and she saw something in his expression. It was a mix of surprise and calculation. "You got him out." Emily just nodded, unable to trust her voice. "The rest of them ran," Marcus said flatly, as if just stating a fact. "But you went back inside." "I heard the explosion. I was nearby. Emily started coughing again, unable to explain. Nathan began to stir, and his eyes opened all the way. His focus landed on Emily, sharp and clear now despite his injury. It was a powerful gaze, even as he lay wounded. He examined her face with a seriousness that made her want to turn away. "Who are you?" His voice was raspy from the smoke, but the question was unmistakable. "Emily Carter. I worked for you, sir." "Why?" That one word carried 1,000 different questions. Emily looked him right in the eye and saw the sharp mind behind them, the suspicion. Nathan Cole had not built his empire by being a trusting man. He would demand to know why she risked her life for him, and she had no answer that wouldn't create even more questions. "I don't know," she said at last. "Honestly, I just couldn't leave you there." Just then, the paramedics arrived, breaking the intense moment. They surrounded Nathan, checking his vital signs and getting him ready for transport. Another crew came toward Emily, but she motioned them away. "I am fine. It is just smoke. Go help the others." Marcus was already on his mobile, shouting commands. The fire department had shown up in full force, their hoses aimed at the blazing mansion. Police cruisers were blocking the entrance. In the distance, news crews circled like buzzards. Emily took it all in from the lawn, trembling in the chilly air, her uniform covered in soot and ash. Her hands began to tremble as the adrenaline wore off. What had she just done? Why did she do it? She came to this estate looking for clues about her past and what became of her family 8 years ago. She had hoped to understand the man who had secretly controlled her life. And now, in a sudden act of either bravery or insanity, she had saved him. As the medics put Nathan into an ambulance, he glanced back at her one last time. Their eyes connected through the mayhem, and Emily could see the question still there, more intense than any fire. "Why did you save my life?" She had no answer for him, not one she could speak aloud. Not for now. The ambulance doors slammed shut, leaving Emily on the grass, surrounded by the night's destruction, and aware that her life had changed forever. She had come out of the shadows, and Nathan Cole was not going to forget her. The great house burned on behind her, its flames licking at the dark November sky, incinerating secrets and destroying proof. But Emily knew some truths could never be burned. They were buried too deep, just waiting for the right time to reappear. and she felt that time was approaching much faster than she was prepared for. The hospital room was nothing like any Emily had ever witnessed. It was private and huge, with furniture that seemed to belong in an upscale hotel instead of a place for the sick. Windows from the floor to the ceiling gave a view of the Chicago skyline. The city's lights sparkled against the early December gloom. This was not the kind of emergency room that ordinary people visited. This was a place where money bought seclusion. Emily waited in the corridor outside. She had turned down any medical care besides basic oxygen, claiming she was okay despite the nagging cough that shook her whole body. 3 days had gone by since the fire. 3 days filled with police interviews, insurance agents, and reporters who wanted to hear what happened. Mrs. Chen had advised her to return home and get some rest, saying the house staff would be on paid time off while everything was sorted out. But Emily could not go. Not just yet. The door creaked open and Marcus came out. His intense gaze landed on her instantly, and a look of irritation crossed his face. "You are still here. Is he conscious?" "He has been. He is asking a lot of questions." Marcus rested against the wall, watching her with a calculating look that she found very disturbing. "About me?" Emily's heart jumped. What sort of questions? The kind you might anticipate. Background information, work records, where you are from, the reason you were employed? Marcus folded his arms. "Your record is clean, almost too clean if you ask me. No police record, no outstanding loans, no ties to any competing groups. You are precisely who you seem to be. A 23-year-old woman who was looking for work and was just in the right spot at the right moment. Or the wrong spot," Emily considered. "It really depends on your point of view." "He wants to talk to you," Marcus added. "Now." Emily stood and nervously ran her hands over her jeans. She had returned home one time to take a shower and get dressed, swapping her spoiled uniform for regular clothes. Without the black dress and apron, she felt unprotected, seen in a way she had not been in months. Marcus held the door for her, but did not go in with her. A bit of advice: do not lie to him. He will know. The room was dimly lit. The afternoon sun streamed through the partly drawn blinds. Nathan was sitting up in the hospital bed, appearing much more aware than she had imagined. A bandage was wrapped around the injury on his head, and machines beeped quietly next to him, but his eyes were clear and focused as they fixed on her. "Emily Carter." He said her name as if he were checking it, seeing if it was real. "Sit down." It was a command, not a suggestion. Emily sat in the chair next to the bed, her hands folded on her lap. "The doctors say that I am very fortunate to be alive," Nathan started, his voice steady. "The explosion should have caused much more damage, but somebody got me out before the worst of it could get to me." He stopped for a moment. "That somebody was you." "Yes, sir." "Do not call me sir. Not after you did that." Nathan moved a little and winced. "I have been in this world for a very long time, Emily. I have witnessed loyalty. I have witnessed betrayal. I have seen people behave out of fear or greed or desire for power, but I have never seen anyone put their own life at risk for no good reason. So, I am going to ask you one more time. Why?" Emily had spent 3 whole days considering that question, getting an answer ready that would please him, but not give away too much. But sitting there now, feeling the intensity of his stare, her prepared speech seemed empty. "I do not know," she finally replied. "I heard the explosion. I was very close. Everyone else was running away, and I just had the thought, someone should go check. Someone should see if anyone was left inside. That is very heroic." The way Nathan said the word made it sound like a criticism. "Do you have any idea what I do, Emily? The type of person I am? I have worked at your house for 6 months. I have a general idea. Then you must know that people do not help men like me from the kindness of their hearts. They help because they are after something, or because they worry about what will happen if they refuse." He leaned a little closer. "So, which one is it for you?" "It is neither." Emily met his gaze, making herself hold it. I did not think about it. I just reacted. Maybe that was a foolish thing to do. Foolish or courageous? Sometimes they are the same. Nathan observed her for a very long time. Marcus did a complete background investigation on you. You were born in Pittsburgh. Your father passed away when you were 15. Your mother died 2 years ago. You have no siblings. You came to Chicago 8 months ago. You held 2 jobs in restaurants before you applied to work for my household staff. You are quiet and dependable. You avoid trouble. He paused. Why did you choose Chicago? Emily's breathing grew shallow. This was a very risky subject. I was looking for a new beginning. Pittsburgh held too many painful memories. Memories of what? Of loss, of sadness, the sorts of things most people try to escape from at some point. Nathan gave a slow nod as if he believed her, but Emily knew he was storing every word, every sign of doubt. The police have some questions about the blast. They believe it was done on purpose. Somebody was trying to send a warning or get rid of a problem. They are going to want to speak with you again. I have already told them all that I know, which is nothing. Because you were simply a housekeeper in the wrong place at the perfect time. Nathan's look softened just a tiny bit. That will be your official account. You did not see anything out of the ordinary, and you did not hear anything strange before the blast. You were bringing coffee and acted on pure reflex when the bomb went off. Do you understand? You want me to lie to the police? I want you to make it through this. The individuals who planted that bomb, Emily, are still at large. And now, you have a connection to me. You saved my life, which means you have effectively painted a target on your own back. His words felt like a bucket of ice water poured over Emily. She had not considered that. She had been too caught up in the immediate chaos to think about the bigger picture. You believe they will try to hurt me? I am certain they will. It has already begun. Nathan pointed to his phone on the table beside the bed. Marcus has already stopped 2 attempts to learn your address. Someone tried to pay off one of my former employees to get information on you. These are not empty threats, Emily. These people are professionals. A chill ran down Emily's back. What am I supposed to do? You are going to accept my protection. I will move you to a secure place where my people can keep an eye on you. You will allow me to ensure your safety until we locate whoever is behind this and deal with them. Deal with them. Emily could barely speak the words. The warmth left Nathan's face. You do not belong in this world, and I will not pull you any deeper into it than I have to. But the situation is straightforward. You are a target because of what you did for me. I always pay my debts, Emily. I take care of what is mine. I do not belong to you. No, Nathan conceded. But like it or not, you are my responsibility now. Emily fought the urge to argue, to claim she could handle herself, go back to her little Pilsen apartment, and get back to her quiet life. But she knew better. 6 months working for Nathan Cole had shown her exactly how his world functioned. His threats were not empty. The danger was very real. Going home would make her a target. How long? She asked. Until you are safe. That might be weeks. It could be longer. And what do you want from me in return? A slight smile touched Nathan's lips, a look that almost passed for a smile. Just honest answers when I ask you questions, that is all. Emily knew it was a trap. Her secrets would never survive a direct interrogation. But going it alone was a much worse option. Fine, I will accept your protection. Good. Nathan took out his phone, his thumbs moving fast across the screen. Marcus is taking you to a protected apartment downtown. It is comfortable, private, and very secure. You will have everything you require. Just try to let someone know before you go out. And do not trust anybody. Not even you? She asked. This time, Nathan's smile was real, but it was cold, especially not me. The apartment was located in a high-rise close to Millennium Park, the type of place with doormen, security cameras, and residents who kept to themselves. Her new residence was on the 23rd floor. It had 2 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a living room with a view of the city. It was gorgeous but cold, like a beautiful, expensive cage. Marcus had driven her there himself, saying almost nothing during the 20-minute trip. He had provided her with a new, secure phone with just 2 contacts stored inside, his and Nathan's. Use this one. Do not use your old phone. Do not get in touch with anyone from your old life until we tell you it is okay. Her old life. It felt like the last 8 months had been completely wiped out in one fiery blast. Emily was at the window, gazing out as Chicago began to glow in the fading winter light. A soft, steady snow began to fall, blanketing the city in a layer of white. Out there, people were living their normal lives, working and loving and getting by, not crushed by the burden of secrets like she was. She had moved to Chicago for a single purpose. 8 years ago, her father vanished. The official version was that he had walked out on his family, running from debts he could not pay and problems he could not fix. But Emily never bought that story. For years she searched for the truth, chasing weak leads that went nowhere until she finally made a connection. Her father had been employed by Nathan Cole, and then he was gone. Emily got the job at Nathan's house to get inside, uncover proof, and finally learn what happened. She had always pictured herself confronting him one day, demanding answers. She never, ever pictured saving his life. Her new phone buzzed. It was a text from a number she did not recognize, but she had a good guess who sent it. "How is the apartment?" Emily replied simply, "Comfortable. Thank you." A response appeared almost instantly. "Get some sleep. We can talk more in the morning." She put the phone down and walked to the bedroom. A wave of pure exhaustion washed over her. Everything from the last 3 days came rushing back. The bombing, the blaze, and that impossible choice to run into the danger, not away from it. Why did she do it? The question haunted her. She could say it was just an impulse, a brave act, or simple human kindness. But deep down, Emily knew it was far more complex. She saved Nathan Cole because she had to have him alive. He held the answers she so desperately needed. And now, stuck in this lovely apartment with him protecting her, she was nearer to those answers than ever. But she wondered what the price would be. Emily lay on the strange bed, watching the snow drift by the window, and worried she had made a terrible mistake. She had been so sure she could handle this, keep her distance while she got the information she needed, but that distance had disappeared. She was caught up in Nathan Cole's life in ways she never could have imagined. And the most troubling part was that a piece of her no longer wanted to leave. She finally drifted into a restless sleep, her mind filled with images of fire, smoke, and piercing eyes that saw everything. When Emily woke up, the sun was rising over Chicago, coloring the sky with shades of pink and gold. It was a new day and a new life. Her phone listed 3 missed calls from Marcus and a text message from Nathan. Breakfast meeting, 9 in the morning. Be prepared. Emily showered and dressed with care, picking an outfit that looked professional without being too stuffy. When she came out of the bedroom, Marcus was already in the living room, holding a coffee and looking impatient. "Mr. Cole is meeting you at his temporary office. We have to go in 10 minutes. "A temporary office? The mansion is part of an active investigation. He is working from another location for now." Marcus offered her the coffee. It was black, which was not how she took it, but she took it from him regardless. "He is going to have questions. Be ready. I thought we went over all of this yesterday. Yesterday was a formality. Today is about business." It was impossible to read the look on Marcus's face. "He likes you, Emily. He has respect for what you did. But do not think that means he trusts you. Nathan Cole trusts no one. It is a luxury he cannot afford." The message was loud and clear. Emily nodded, sipping the strong coffee, bracing herself for what was to come. She had wanted to get near Nathan Cole to figure out the man who had shaped her life from a distance. This was finally her opportunity. But as the elevator went down to the lobby that winter morning, Emily had the sinking feeling she was being pulled deeper into a world she could not comprehend, toward answers that could shatter her whole reality. The truth was near. She had saved Nathan Cole's life to learn it. All she had to do now was live through what happened next. His temporary office was a penthouse suite in the Loop district, all glass and steel, with a view that stretched over the Chicago skyline, all the way to Lake Michigan. Emily had pictured a much darker, more hidden place. Instead, Nathan Cole's office felt remarkably businesslike. It had a mahogany desk, leather seating, and shelves full of official-looking business files. If you were not aware of who he was, you might mistake him for any other wealthy businessman. Nathan was by the window when Marcus brought her in. He was a dark shape framed by the bright morning sun. He had gotten out of the hospital 2 days prior, and while he still moved with caution, the dressing on his temple was smaller now, almost hidden by his dark hair. "Emily, I appreciate you coming." He pointed to a chair opposite his desk. "Can I get you coffee? Something to eat?" "I am fine, thank you." Nathan took a seat in his own chair, examining her with that intense look she was starting to get used to. "So, are you settling into the new apartment okay?" "It is very nice. It is more than I require, but it is not what you desire." He stated it as a fact. "You want to return to your old life and act like this was all a bad dream. I am afraid that is not possible right now. Do you know who was behind this? We are making progress. The investigation has turned up a few interesting things." Nathan took a folder from a desk drawer and opened it with care. The bomb was a sophisticated device, placed in my study sometime while the party was going on. There is nothing on the security cameras. The person responsible knew all of our blind spots. But we were able to find one thing. We lifted a partial print from a piece of the timing device. Emily's heart started to race. "Do you have a match?" "We are checking it against several databases, but that process takes a while." Nathan shut the folder. "But that is not the reason I brought you here. I want to talk about you, Emily. I want to talk about your father." His words felt like a punch to the gut. The calm exterior Emily had worked so hard to maintain finally shattered. "What about my father?" "Thomas Carter handled logistics and transportation in Pittsburgh. He vanished 8 years ago when you were only 15, leaving a wife and daughter with a mountain of debt." Nathan spoke as if he were reading a report, but his eyes never left her face. "The public story is that he just took off, that he could not face his obligations. But you never accepted that, did you?" Emily squeezed her hands together in her lap. "How do you know all that about my father?" "Because it is my job to know everything about the people in my employment, particularly someone who puts their own life on the line to save me." Nathan shifted forward in his chair. "Your father did not run away, Emily. He worked for me for a short time, 8 years ago." The world seemed to spin. Emily had long suspected it and had tried for months to prove it, but to hear Nathan say it so plainly made it shockingly real. So what happened to him? There was a transport job that went horribly bad. A number of people got hurt, and some lost a great deal of money. Your father was the one to blame. We could never figure out if it was because he was incapable or if he did it on purpose. Nathan stopped for a moment. He vanished before we had a chance to properly question him. "That is a lie," Emily said, her voice trembling. "My father was not a screw-up. He would never just abandon his family. I am only telling you the facts. And what everyone in my organization believed happened." Nathan's face showed no emotion. "But you do not believe it either. That is the real reason you came to Chicago. So that's why you came to work here. You were searching for the truth." Emily shot up from her seat, the chair legs screeching on the floor. "You've known all along. You knew exactly who I was. I only found out after the explosion. Marcus did a deep dive on your background, but linking you to your father required more effort. The name Carter is fairly common, but after I started looking into it, the details started to connect." Nathan also stood, walking around his desk. "Emily, please sit down. We have to discuss this. Why would I trust a single word you say? My father is gone because of you. My mother spent years barely surviving, dying, drowning in debt, wondering what she'd ever done to make her husband abandon her. You have every right to be angry, but I am not the enemy here. I did not make your father vanish, Emily. I wanted answers just as much as you. Emily stood her ground, shaking with 8 years of bottled-up fury and sorrow. Tell me what actually happened. Nathan let out a sigh. His sigh was heavy with a surprising burden. Your father was moving merchandise for me. The items were legitimate, actually, but they were tied to some less-than-legal business associates. The delivery was hit. It was not the cops, it was a rival crew. 3 of my men were injured in the fight. $2 million worth of product was lost. Your father was behind the wheel of the truck, but he was gone when we discovered it abandoned. We figured he was either kidnapped, had bolted, or was part of the setup. We never learned which one it was. We searched for him for a time, but resources are limited, and your father was not the only fire I had to put out. In the end, the search was called off. He became just another unsolved case, another cost of doing business. Nathan's tone softened a bit. I am sorry, Emily. I know it does not change anything, but it is true. Emily collapsed back into her chair, her legs suddenly feeling like jelly. 8 years of questions led to this. Her father got mixed up in a deal that went bad, and then simply disappeared, leaving only theories and heartache behind. I do not get it. If you knew this could happen, why involve him? Why put him at risk? Your father approached me. He was desperate for cash. For your mother's hospital bills, if I remember correctly. The beginning of the sickness that finally claimed her. He was in a tough spot, willing to take a big risk if the pay was right. I offered him a chance. It was supposed to be a simple run. Nathan went back to his own chair. I have replayed that night in my head countless times over the years. What I could have changed, what warnings I might have overlooked. And you want me to think you feel guilty? I want you to think that I am human, and I know my choices affect people's lives. Your father's disappearance, your mother's pain, your entire world being shattered. Yes, Emily, I live with that weight. I live with all of it. That confession just hung there in the silence between them. Emily scanned Nathan's face, looking for a trick, for some kind of angle, but she only saw a deep, weary honesty. It did not take away her anger, but it twisted it into something more confusing. So why tell me this now? Because you saved my life, because you have a right to the truth, and because, Nathan paused, showing a rare glimpse of hesitation, because I believe your father's disappearance and the bombing at my estate might be linked. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. What? How is that possible? The prints we lifted from the timer's trigger. We got a positive ID this morning. Nathan took another file from the folder and pushed it across the desk. It belongs to a man named David Chen. He was on my payroll 8 years ago. He was on the team for that transport the night your father went missing. Emily stared at the file. It was a personnel record with a picture of a middle-aged Asian man, his face stern and plain. I do not understand. Why would he come after you now? Because he holds me responsible for what went down that night. 3 men were hurt in that attack. David's brother was one of them. He made it, but was left with permanent injuries and could not work. David quit my operation soon after that, and he just vanished into the criminal underworld. We had heard whispers for years that he was freelancing for rival outfits, but we had nothing solid. And now he is trying to take you out. It looks that way, but there is more to it. Nathan leaned in closer. The last person known to see your father alive was David Chen. He was inside the truck right before it was found empty. If anyone knows what went down that night, it is him. The truth hit Emily like a bolt of lightning. After 8 years of hitting brick walls and living with doubt, she realized she was just one man away from finally knowing. Where is he? We are looking for him. David is a pro at staying off the grid. But that explosion was brazen, sloppy. He made mistakes that we can use. Nathan's face grew hard. When we find him, I will make sure you get your answers, Emily. I give you my word. Why would you do that for me? Because you saved my life. Because I am partly responsible for this whole mess. And because, Nathan stopped again, choosing his next words with care. Because I know what it feels like to live without answers, to be so haunted by the past that it is all you are. For the first time since she walked into that office, Emily saw Nathan Cole, not as the ruthless, powerful man whose life she had entered, but as a man weighed down by his own history. She could see a darkness in his eyes, a shadow of old pain that looked just like her own. "What's your story?" she asked, her voice soft. "That is a tale for another day." Nathan got up and walked back to the window. The snow had started up again, blanketing the city in a fresh layer of white. "Right now, we need to focus on David Chen and getting you the truth you've earned. But Emily, you have to understand something. When we do find him, the truth might not be what you want to hear. Your father could have been a victim, or he could have been part of the betrayal. Are you ready to face either one of those truths?" Emily came to the window beside him, watching the snow dance between the tall buildings. "I have spent 8 years playing out every possible scenario in my head. Whatever the truth is, I have to know. I have to finally put the wondering to rest. Even if it shatters the image you have of him. That image is already shattered. At least the truth, whatever it is, would be something real." Nathan gave a slow nod. "Then we have a deal. I will help you find out what happened to your father. In exchange, I need you to keep trusting me. Stay here under my protection, and let me handle what needs to be done to ensure you stay safe." "What needs to be done? What does that mean?" "It means that when we find David Chen, things will get ugly. It will not be pretty. I have to know that you can deal with that." Emily looked him right in the eye. "I have been dealing with hard truths my entire life. I think I can handle one more." The next few days settled into an unusual routine. Emily stayed at the safe house, but Nathan started visiting her, often with files and updates on the case. They would sit at her dining room table with documents spread out, trying to assemble the pieces of what happened 8 years ago. Emily found out that her father was hired specifically because he had no prior ties to Nathan's business. He was a new face, someone the rival outfits would not know. The delivery route had been mapped out carefully to avoid known hotspots, but someone must have tipped them off. The attack was too perfect, the timing too exact, for it to be a coincidence. David Chen was in the truck when they were hit. Nathan explained one night, gesturing at a map. "He managed to get away in all the chaos. He claimed your father panicked and took off in the other direction. By the time David made it to safety and called for backup, your father was gone. The truck was empty. No sign of a struggle, no blood, no body. He was just gone. David might be lying. He could have hurt my father himself and just used the ambush as a cover story. That is possible, which is why we have to find him and ask him the right questions." Nathan's phone vibrated. He looked at it, and his face changed. "Marcus just pinged me with a lead. There is security footage from a warehouse on the south side showing a man who fits David's description. We are going to hit it tonight." Emily was on her feet in an instant. "I am going with you." "No way. It is too dangerous. This is about my father. I have every right to be there." Nathan looked at her for a long, silent moment. "If you come, you wait in the car with Marcus. You do not get involved in what happens. That is the deal. Fine." "I am serious, Emily. This is not up for debate. David Chen is a cornered and dangerous man. I will not have you get hurt." The protectiveness in his tone caught her off guard. In the last few weeks, their dynamic had shifted from boss and employee to something far more complicated. Not exactly friends, not exactly partners, but a bond formed from a common goal and a hesitant trust. "I understand," Emily said. "I will stay with Marcus, but I have to be there. Please." Nathan nodded. "Grab your coat. We are leaving in 20 minutes." The warehouse was in a grimy industrial park down by the river, hemmed in by derelict factories and vacant lots. The snow had piled up in deep drifts, which made the decaying area seem almost calm. A trio of black sport utility vehicles rolled up to a building with smashed-out windows and walls covered in graffiti. Emily watched from the back as Nathan and 6 of his men moved toward the door. They moved with tactical precision, their weapons drawn and ready at a low carry. Marcus stayed behind with her, the engine humming, his eyes methodically sweeping the area. "How long is this going to take?" Emily asked. Emily. "That depends on if David's really in there, and if he feels like talking." Marcus's hand was resting on his own sidearm. "Mr. Cole is skilled at talking, but some folks are just harder to sway." They waited. 10 minutes turned into 20. Emily's anxiety coiled tighter every second. This was everything. The answers she desperately needed were in that building, so close she could feel it. Suddenly, gunshots exploded. The cracks were sharp and clear, shattering the winter silence. Marcus cursed, grabbing for his radio. "Team 2, report your status. Just static." Then a voice cut through the noise. "We have contact. Multiple hostiles." Nathan was not alone. More shots rang out. Emily's heart pounded against her ribs. Through the warehouse's shattered windows, she saw the flash of gunfire and shadows moving in the dark. "Stay in the car," Marcus commanded as he started for the door. "But Nathan," I said. "Stay." Marcus was already gone, sprinting toward the building and leaving her by herself in the car. She knew she should obey him. She knew she should stay safe. But the idea of Nathan being in danger, hurt again because of something tied to her father, was more than she could stand. Emily's hands fumbled for the door handle as she stepped out into the falling snow. The frigid air bit at her, but a rush of adrenaline pushed her forward. She ran to the warehouse, keeping her head down, her breath making clouds in the air. The shooting had ended, replaced by angry shouts and the sounds of a fight. Emily got to the entrance and flattened herself against the cold wall. Inside, she saw Nathan and his team in a standoff with several men. David Chen was there. She knew his face from the photographs, his hands in the air, but his expression full of defiance. Blood trickled from Nathan's knuckles, and one of his guards was on the ground, holding his shoulder. "You wrecked my family," David yelled. "My brother is crippled because of you, because of that shipment, because you risked us for your own profit. Your brother got hurt because somebody leaked our route." Nathan's voice was ice cold, perfectly calm in the middle of the chaos. "Someone informed our enemies exactly where we would be. That someone was you, David. You planned the whole ambush. You betrayed us." David's face contorted. "I had to get the money. They paid me a lot more than you ever did." "And what about Thomas Carter? What did you do to him?" The sound of her father's name, Emily forgot how to breathe. David let out a bitter laugh. "Carter put it together. He knew the ambush was no accident. He came to me. He said he would tell you everything, so I took care of it." "How did you take care of it?" Nathan's voice was dangerously low. "I made certain he would never talk. I made sure he was not a problem anymore." David's smile was pure evil. "Do you want to know what I did to him? Check the river. That is how we make problems vanish in this city." The words struck Emily like a punch. Her father did not abandon them. He did not just run off. He was trying to do what was right, and David Chen murdered him for it. She must have gasped or choked out a sob, because in an instant, every person in the room turned to look at her in the doorway. Nathan's look changed from rage to pure panic. "Emily, get back!" But David moved first. He dove to the side, snatching a gun from a fallen man and swinging it toward Emily with a violent desperation. Nathan lunged, tackling David just before he could shoot. They crashed to the floor, wrestling for control of the pistol. Marcus and the rest of the security team charged in. But in the frenzy, the situation was getting out of control. Emily was frozen in place. The truth about her father was finally real. The answer she had hunted for 8 years. It was a terrible truth that made her feel empty inside. The fight ended with David restrained and the weapon kicked aside. Nathan stood over him, breathing heavily. "Get him out. I want him held somewhere secure. He has a lot more to answer for." Marcus yanked David up, dragging him to one of the SUVs. The other guards went with them, leaving just Nathan and Emily at the warehouse entrance. "You were supposed to stay in the vehicle," Nathan said. His voice had no anger, only worry. "He took my father," Emily's voice cracked. He killed him because my father was trying to do the right thing. Nathan stepped toward her, and for a second Emily thought he would hold her or offer some comfort. But he stopped himself. I am sorry, Emily. I am truly sorry this is how you found out. Is it for real? The river. We will search it. We will do whatever it takes to recover him, to bring him home. Nathan's voice was soft in a way she had never heard. But I do believe David was being honest. Your father found out about the betrayal and paid the ultimate price for doing the right thing. Emily felt her tears turning to ice on her face. 8 years of wondering were now answered in the most horrible way imaginable. Her father did not leave them. He had tried to protect them, to prevent the danger, and they had taken him for it. He was a good man, she whispered. Yes, Nathan said back. He was, and he is owed justice. I give you my word, Emily. David Chen is going to pay for what he did, not only for your father, but for all of it. They stood there in the dark, surrounded by snow. Two souls connected by loss and events, by debts and by truths finally coming to light. Emily came to Chicago looking for answers. She had them now, and they were somehow both better and worse than she could have guessed. Her father was no coward, he was a hero. And knowing that, as painful as it was, gave her a foundation to stand on. Something real and solid in a life that had felt so unstable for so long. Thank you, Emily said at last, for helping me learn the truth. Nathan simply nodded. It is what you were owed, what you have always been owed. He motioned to the SUV where Marcus was waiting. Come on, let's get you inside where it is warm. We can discuss everything tomorrow, plan what to do next. As they moved through the snow, Emily knew that her world had shifted once more. The truth about her father had set her free, but it also tied her even closer to Nathan and his world. She had saved his life, and he had given her the truth. They were linked now by something more than just boss and employee, or protector and the one being protected. They were linked by a shared knowledge of loss, of justice, and of the heavy burden that comes with knowing. And inside Nathan Cole's dangerous life, that kind of link might just be the most dangerous thing of all. The interrogation was held in a building Emily had never seen, on the industrial outskirts of Chicago, a place where people could ask questions without being disturbed. She was in an observation room behind one-way glass, watching Nathan and Marcus interrogate David Chen. The man who murdered her father was handcuffed to a steel table, his earlier defiance gone, replaced with the cold calculus of survival. You arranged the ambush 8 years ago, Nathan stated, his voice even. You accepted money from the Vulov organization to give them our transport schedule. Your own brother was injured because of it. Thomas Carter found out what you did and faced you, and then you killed him to save yourself. David just stared at the tabletop. I want to see a lawyer. That is not the kind of discussion we are having. Nathan settled back into his chair. We are past the point of lawyers, David. We are now at the part where you tell me everything, and I get to decide if you make it through the next 24 hours. Marcus stood silently in the corner with his arms crossed, a large and threatening presence. Emily watched from behind the glass, her feelings a chaotic mix of sorrow, fury, and something else she could not identify. Maybe it was justice, or maybe revenge. The difference between them seemed incredibly small. The bomb at your mansion, Nathan went on. That was also you. Why do it now, after all this time? David's jaw clenched. Because you still owe me a debt. My brother was hurt because of your operation, and you never made things right. You just went on with your life like he was nothing. Like we were all nothing. So you chose to kill me and make it look like a rival gang did it. I chose to make you feel what we felt. The loss, the pain, the feeling of having everything ripped away from you. David looked up, his eyes locking with Nathan's, filled with pure hatred. But that girl messed it all up. The maid. If she had not gotten you out of there, you would be gone, and I would be free. Emily's fists tightened. She had rescued Nathan, And by doing that, she had destroyed David's entire plan. The strange twist of fate was not lost on her. The daughter of the man David had killed was the very reason he had failed. Who else was in on it? Nathan's tone changed, becoming even colder. That explosive was professionally made. You did not build it by yourself. Who was your partner? No one. I did it alone. Wrong answer. Nathan got up and nodded at Marcus. We found the messages on your phone, David. They were encrypted, but we have experts for that. We know you were talking to someone inside my own company. Someone who let you into the mansion during the party, who pointed out the security blind spots. David's face lost all its color. I have no idea what you are talking about. In that case, let me jog your memory. Nathan took out a tablet and pushed it across the table. These are messages that were sent to a burner phone for the last 6 months. Planning sessions, discussions about the layout, timing, everything was coordinated. You got help from one of my own people, David. Now tell me who it was. The silence in the room was heavy. Emily pressed closer to the glass, her heart racing. A traitor inside the organization would explain how David planted the bomb without anyone knowing. But who could have had that level of access? Who would risk it all to help David Chen get his revenge? If I tell you, David finally said, I will need protection. The Witness Protection Program, far away from Chicago. A new name, a whole new life. You are in no position to make demands. Then I am not saying a word. David leaned back, trying to look confident, but failing. You need what I know more than I need to tell you. Nathan watched him After a long pause, he exited the interrogation room. He then entered the observation area where Emily was waiting. He is going to make this difficult, Nathan said, his voice tight with annoyance. But he will give in. They always do. Who could it be? Emily asked. Who has that kind of access to your security team? That is the very question that has been tormenting me. Nathan walked toward the window, gazing at the gloomy December sky. My inner circle is very small. There is Marcus, of course, and I would trust him with anything. My financial head, Rebecca Torres, has been with me for 12 years. My attorney, James Patterson, deals with private matters. And then there is... He paused, his face darkening. Who? Richard Kane. He is in charge of my real estate assets, but he knows people throughout the company. He was at the mansion the evening of the blast. Nathan took out his phone and began to type. Marcus, do a thorough check on Richard Kane. Finances, messages, travel, the whole thing. Marcus's voice came from the phone's speaker. What are we trying to find? Any connection to David Chen or the Volkov Group? Anything that shows his loyalty is split. Emily studied Nathan's expression, watching the weight of betrayal settle on him. You had faith in these people. Faith is a messy subject in my world. You learn to trust people for specific jobs, never for everything, but even a small breach of trust leaves a mark. Nathan looked back at her. You should head back to the apartment. This is going to be a long night and you do not need to be here for it. I am staying. I need to see this to the end. Emily, he is the reason my father is gone. I should be here when we find out why. Her tone was firm, allowing no further discussion. Nathan watched her, and Emily noticed a change in his eyes. It might have been respect or an acknowledgement of her resolve. Very well, but you will remain in this room. Regardless of what you witness in there, you do not leave. Understood. Understood. 3 hours later, Marcus came back with news that changed it all. Richard Kane pulled out $500,000 in cash this past year, Marcus said, placing documents on a table in the room. The amounts were small enough to avoid setting off alarms, but they show a clear pattern. He also took 3 trips to Pittsburgh in the last 18 months. None of them were for business. Pittsburgh, Emily whispered. That is where David went after he fled Chicago. Nathan took one of the papers, his jaw clenched. Richard was sending money to David, helping him stay off the grid while they set this up. I have employed him for 8 years. 8 years. He smiled at me, and took my pay while he plotted to kill me. There is more, Marcus said. Richard's younger sister is set to marry David Chen's nephew. They hid the relationship. Different surnames, no public ties, but the family connection is there. Family. Nathan's voice was sharp. It always comes back to family, does it not? Richard assisted David because of that tie, because he bought the story about me being responsible for David's brother. Do we bring Richard in now? Marcus asked. Not yet. I want to see how far this goes. Who else could be a part of this? Nathan turned to Emily. I have a question for you, and I need you to think hard before you speak. David claimed someone let him into the mansion. Richard could give him details, but he was not at the estate on the day of the blast. Someone else had to physically assist David with that bomb. Emily's mind replayed the events of that evening. The staff was busy with the party. Security's attention was on the arrivals, but she remembered that one strange moment, an odd request in the kitchen. Mrs. Chen, Emily said abruptly. The main housekeeper. She was the one who asked me to take the coffee to your study. She told me to go right away. She said it could not wait, despite the party being underway. Nathan and Marcus looked at each other. Mrs. Chen is David's cousin, Marcus stated quietly. We looked into her years ago, but the link seemed too weak to be a problem. She has been part of the household for a decade. She had the run of the place, Emily added, the details clicking together. She could have snuck David into the house, told him where to set the bomb, and known your exact schedule. And she sent me up there moments before the blast because she needed a witness, Nathan finished. Someone to place me in the study when it happened. Someone who appeared harmless and uninvolved. His expression hardened. She knowingly put you in danger, using you as an unaware piece in her plan. The truth struck Emily with force. Mrs. Chen, who had been so nice to her, who had shown her the way things worked and praised her performance. She had been willing to throw Emily away to help David get his revenge. Where is she at this moment? Nathan asked Marcus. She has been on paid leave with the other staff since it happened. Her last known location is an apartment in Bridgeport. Get her and be discreet. I want her in a separate room from David. They must not know we have both of them. Nathan's voice was frigid, filled with a quiet fury, and get me Richard Kane. I do not care what story you have to tell him. Just get him here. Marcus left at once, taking 2 security men with him. Nathan stayed in the room with Emily, both of them absorbing the magnitude of the betrayal. 3 people, Emily said. 3 people conspired to bring you down. And they almost did. They would have, if not for you, Nathan replied, turning to look at her. That is what I cannot stop thinking about, Emily. About everything that night. If you had fled like the others, if you had put your own life first, David's plot would have gone off without a hitch. I would be dead, and no one would have discovered the treachery for a long time, if ever. Why do you believe I did not run? The question hung in the air. Nathan stepped closer, and Emily felt herself stop breathing, aware of the power in his eyes. I have been asking myself that since I woke up in the hospital, Nathan said softly. At first, I figured it was just chance, an impulse. Then I wondered if you had your own reasons. But now, after everything we have faced, after learning of your father and seeing you handle that truth, I think you did it because you saw a man worth saving. Not the name, not the influence, just the man. Emily swallowed, her throat tight. You gave me the truth about my father. You could have concealed it, shielded yourself from my rage, but you did not. You helped me get closure, even when it made things harder between us. We are not so different. Both of us were defined by loss, both of us trying to find a reason in a world that took from us without permission. Nathan's tone softened. I did not anticipate this, Emily. Any of it. But I am thankful you are here. Before Emily could answer, Marcus's voice burst from the speaker. Boss, we have Mrs. Chen. She is asking to see a lawyer, but I think she will break when she sees what we have. Richard Kane is being retrieved now. He will be here in less than an hour. Good. Keep them apart. I will begin with Mrs. Chen. Nathan stood up straight, the brief moment of openness gone as he stepped back into his role as the one in charge. Emily, you should wait here. This is about to get intense. I can deal with intense. I know you can. That is not what I am worried about. Nathan paused by the door. What worries me is that you should not have to deal with it. You have suffered enough because of my world. This is my decision, Emily said, her voice strong. I am staying. The questioning of Mrs. Chen was short but shattering. Faced with the proof of her role and cut off from David's sway, the older woman fell apart. Yes, she had helped her cousin enter the mansion. Yes, she had sent Emily to the study when David needed his witness. No, she had not thought Emily could be harmed or that an innocent person would be caught in the middle. David swore no one would get hurt. Mrs. Chen sobbed, tears covering her face. He said it was only for Mr. Cole, that he had it coming for David's brother, and for Thomas Carter. You knew about my father? Emily's voice shot through the speaker system before Nathan could intervene. Mrs. Chen glanced toward the one-way mirror as if she could see Emily there. I knew Thomas tried to uncover David's betrayal. I knew David had to defend himself. I did not approve, but I saw why. Family looks after family, even when they are wrong, even when blameless people get hurt. You do not get how this world is, child. Sometimes you get no good choices, only necessary ones. Nathan stopped the interrogation, his face grim. When Richard Kane showed up 30 minutes later, the disloyal lawyer was defiant until faced with the financial trails and call logs. Then, his defenses collapsed like falling dominoes. David Chen found me 2 years ago, Richard confessed. He was aware of my family connection through his nephew. He told me what Nathan did, how the company grew rich while his family was ruined. He asked me to help him find justice. I thought I was doing what was right. The right thing would have been to bring those worries to me, Nathan said. He said without emotion. But you chose to betray, conspire, and attempt to murder me. You helped put a device in place that could have injured many innocent people at that event. I had no idea it would be that powerful. David promised it would be small, precise, and that you would be the only one harmed. And you went along with it because it was easy to go along with it, because it freed you from any guilt for what you were actually doing. Nathan leaned in. You have ruined your own life, Richard. Your job, your good name, your personal freedom. Was it all worth it? Richard could not answer. By the time the three plotters had all been interviewed and their confessions were on record, darkness had covered Chicago. Emily was at the window of the observation room, watching the snow come down in the glow of the streetlights. She felt a deep exhaustion that was more than just physical. Nathan came up beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her without a word. It is finished, Emily said. You have everyone who was part of it. The danger is gone. Yes, now the hard part begins, figuring out what to do with them. Them. Nathan took a sip of his coffee. Where I come from, we have lasting ways to handle betrayal. These solutions make sure the problem never comes back. Emily shivered, and it was not because of the cold night air. And what is your plan? That all depends on what you want from this, Emily. David Chen is responsible for your father's absence. Mrs. Chen and Richard Kane helped him, and they made it possible for him to endanger your life. You have a voice in this decision. Are you asking me if I want them dead? Emily could not say the words. I am asking what justice is to you. What result will bring you peace? Nathan set his coffee down and turned to face her. I will not pretend this is about mercy or morals. I am offering this because you are important to me, Emily. Your thoughts and your needs matter more than most people's do. So tell me what you want. Emily thought of her father, the long years of grief and not knowing, and the truth that was finally out. She pictured Mrs. Chen's tears, Richard's excuses, and David's raw anger. She also thought about the endless cycle of violence in Nathan's world, where revenge just creates more revenge, and justice is no different from vengeance. I want them to face real consequences, Emily said with care. True consequences, not just a quiet disappearance. I want David Chen to admit what he did to my father, and to take public responsibility if he can. I want Mrs. Chen and Richard to feel the weight of their actions, but I do not want them to die. That will not bring me peace, Nathan. It would only make me part of the same terrible cycle that took my father. Nathan was silent for a very long time. You are asking me to show them mercy. I am asking you to pick a different way forward. For my sake, yes, but for your sake too. Emily looked right at him. You once told me you knew what it felt like to live without answers, and to be haunted by your past. This could be a chance to finally break that pattern, to do something different than what is expected. If I grant mercy, some might call it weakness. Other people who consider betraying me could see it as a chance. Or they could see it as strength, as the confidence to act in ways that nobody would predict. Emily's voice was full of sincerity. You have completely changed my life, Nathan. You gave me the truth when you could have left me guessing. You kept me safe when you could have just sent me away. Perhaps it is time for you to change your own life as well. Nathan turned to the window again, watching the snow pile up on the street. Emily stood by, understanding his decision would shape the future for three people, and it would also define their own relationship and Nathan's path forward. All right, Nathan said at last. We will do this your way. David, Mrs. Chen, and Richard will be handed over to the police with more than enough evidence for a conviction, a legitimate trial through the proper channels. They will be judged in a courtroom, not in some dark alley. Thank you. Do not thank me just yet. This choice makes everything far more complicated. Police investigations, court trials, and media attention. My organization will be watched much more carefully. Some of my business ventures will have to adapt or be shut down completely. Would that be such a bad thing? Nathan looked at her, and Emily saw a mix of feelings on his face. He looked vulnerable, hopeful, and scared all at once. I am not sure. Change is never easy in my world. But you might be right. Maybe it is time. Marcus walked into the observation room, his face showing no emotion. The police are on their way. We have organized the documents to present the evidence clearly without revealing our methods. David, Mrs. Chen, and Richard face charges of conspiracy, attempted murder, and other crimes. The district attorney is very keen to prosecute this case. Good. Nathan nodded. Be sure to include Emily's father's case in the new investigation. David's confession about Thomas Carter must be on the official record. It is already done. They are reopening the missing persons case as a homicide investigation based on what David said. Emily felt tears stinging her eyes. After 8 years, her father's case would finally be taken seriously by the law. She might never find a body to bury or get full closure, but his story would be acknowledged. The truth would be part of the official record. What about you? Marcus asked Nathan. If this case goes to trial, you will be subpoenaed. Your companies will be investigated. Are you ready for that kind of intense examination? I will manage it. It is time to get my house in order anyway. I need to separate the legal businesses from the rest. It will not be simple, but Nathan looked over at Emily. Perhaps it is what needs to be done. After Marcus left to meet with the police, Emily and Nathan stood in the observation room. They watched through one-way glass as David Chen sat in handcuffs, completely defeated. My father was trying to do the right thing, Emily said softly. It cost him his life, but he still tried. I believe he would be proud that his daughter chose mercy instead of revenge. I think he would be proud of you no matter what. You are stronger than anyone I have ever known. Emily Carter, and you are braver too. I learned it from him and from my mother, who never gave up after he was gone. And, Emily paused, then added, from you. Seeing how you have handled all of this, how you managed your world while also trying to do right by me. It has shown me that people are capable of changing, that strength can be shown in many ways. Nathan started to reach for her shoulder, but then he pulled his hand back. When this is all finished, The investigations, the court cases, everything after. You will be able to go back to your life wherever you wish. I will make sure you have money, protection if you need it, and references for any career you want. You are already making plans for me to leave. I am making plans for your freedom. It is what you came to Chicago to find. Answers about what happened to your father. You have them now. You do not have to live in my world any longer. Emily turned and faced him directly. But what if I want to stay? Not because I need to be safe. Not because I am looking for answers, but because I am choosing to. The question remained between them, filled with meaning neither of them had truly considered. Nathan's face showed a flash of shock, then caution, and finally something else. It looked a lot like hope. My life is a dangerous one, Emily. Even with the changes, even if it is more legitimate. It is not an easy life. I am not looking for easy. I am looking for a purpose, for meaning. I used to think that meant discovering what happened to my dad. But maybe it is about more than that. Maybe it is about finding out who I am now that I have the answers, not just who I was before. Nathan looked closely at her face, searching for any doubt. If you stay, the way things are between us, it cannot be the same. You are not my employee anymore, and you are not just someone I am obligated to protect. If you stay, you must stay as my equal. As a person who chooses this life knowing exactly what it entails. I understand. Do you really? Because after you make this choice, Emily, you can never go back to being unseen. People will know you are with me. They will have their opinions and judgments. Some might try to use you against me. Others will dislike your influence. It is a very difficult path. It was not easy growing up after my father vanished, or watching my mother wear down and disappear inside herself, or spending 8 years looking for answers nobody else wanted. Emily's tone was firm and clear. I am not scared of hard roads, Nathan. I am only scared of abandoning something real just because it is complicated. For the first time she could remember, Nathan Cole offered a true smile, not the polished look he used for business or the cold glint of a winning move, but a real warmth that changed his entire face. Then stay, he said plainly. Stay with me, and we will see what happens next. Heaven knows I need someone with clear eyes, someone who will challenge me, someone who picks mercy when force would be simple. I can do that. I am certain you can. That is why I am asking. Outside, the flashing red and blue lights of police cars bounced off the snow. Inside, 3 individuals who had planned great harm would now see justice through the proper system, not through personal revenge. And in the viewing area, 2 people drawn together by fire and loss stood next to each other, seeing one story end as a new one started. Emily arrived in Chicago to find the truth about her past. She discovered that, and also something she never anticipated. A future that was unclear but real, difficult but true, and risky but genuine. As Nathan went to speak with the police, Emily got ready to make her own statement about the last few weeks. She could feel her father's spirit, like a soft whisper in her soul. He had tried to do what was right in a terrible situation. Now, his daughter would do the same, not by avoiding the mess, but by facing it. Not by picking what was safe, but by picking what had meaning. The truth had finally freed her. Now, she had to choose what to do with her new freedom. And for the first time in 8 years, Emily Carter knew precisely who she was and what she desired. She desired to stay. She desired to build a new life from the ruins of the old one. She wanted to know if Nathan Cole could truly fix his world, and she wanted to be there to help him do it. This was not the conclusion she pictured when she first drove into Chicago. It was much better. Spring came to Chicago like a fulfilled promise, gently at first, and then with a sudden rush. The snow vanished, showing a city that had weathered another harsh winter. Trees on Michigan Avenue sprouted fresh green leaves, and Lake Michigan shed its winter gray, turning a deep blue under the bright sky. Emily was on the balcony of her new office, looking as the city came alive. 6 months had gone by since the explosion, since the world had shifted. The apartment from Nathan was no longer just a temporary place. It was now her home, and this office was something she had never dreamed of for herself. It was a real position in Nathan Cole's reformed business enterprise. "You are here early," Nathan said from the doorway. He was holding 2 cups of coffee, a small ritual they had started over the last few months. "I could not sleep. I have too much on my mind." Emily took the coffee with thanks. "The trial begins next week." "I know." Nathan stood with her, on the balcony. "Are you prepared?" "As prepared as I will ever be. Speaking against David, Mrs. Chan, and Richard. It has to be done, but it does not feel right. Justice rarely feels good. It is simply required." Nathan took a sip of his coffee, gazing at the buildings. The district attorney feels they have a solid case against all 3 of them, especially David. His story about your father, plus the evidence from the blast, should mean a long time in prison. Emily gave a slight nod, feeling that old pain that always came with thoughts of her father. The police investigation had backed up David's story. Divers had checked the river spots he mentioned, but they found nothing. Thomas Carter was still officially missing, but his case was now considered a likely homicide. It was not the final answer Emily wanted, but it was a form of recognition. The truth was now in the official file. "How do you feel about your own testimony?" Emily asked. Nathan's face grew tense. "It is complicated. I will need to talk about parts of my business I have kept hidden for a long time." The prosecutor promised they are only focused on what is needed for the conspiracy case, but when you pull one string, the whole thing can come apart. For the last 6 months, Nathan had been methodically remaking his empire. The legal businesses, like property, building, and trade, were being completely cut off from anything shady. Any operations that could not be made legitimate were being closed down for good. This was expensive, difficult, and faced pushback from some of his old partners. But Nathan had not wavered. "No more living in the shadows," he said to Emily one evening while they looked over company papers. "If I want to create something that endures, it needs to stand up to the light of day." The change was not simple. Some people in Nathan's circle had left, refusing to go along with the new plan. Others had tried to sabotage the changes, thinking it was a sign of weakness. But Nathan stood his ground, and slowly a different organization took shape, one that was smaller, more honest, and built to last. Emily was a part of that change. Her fresh eyes, her knack for spotting patterns and asking tough questions, had been a great asset. Nathan created a role for her as a special consultant, in charge of community outreach and ethical reviews for his companies. It was unheard of. A person with no experience in his world, with no ties to the old ways, was given true power. "People are going to wonder why I picked you," Nathan had told her. "They will whisper about favoritism or other reasons. Let them think what they want. I will show my worth with my actions, not my words." And she did just that. Emily dove into learning about Nathan's companies, finding places where investing in the community could help both the business and the people in the neighborhoods his projects touched. She created scholarship funds, work training programs, and alliances with local groups. It was deliberate, careful work, but it was starting to show results. "I have something here for you," Nathan said, now taking an envelope out of his jacket. "This arrived this morning." Emily opened it with care. Inside was a letter from the Chicago Police Department's unit for missing persons. Her breathing stopped as she read the words. "Dear Miss Carter, we are writing to let you know that the case of your father, Thomas Carter, has been officially updated based on the new evidence from David Chen's confession and other statements. We have concluded that your father was the victim of a crime. Although we have not been able to find any physical remains, we wanted to inform you that your father is no longer listed as a person who disappeared voluntarily. He is now recognized as a victim, and his case is now an active and open investigation." Tears clouded her sight. They see him now. After all this time, they finally see what truly happened. Nathan put a comforting hand on her shoulder. Your father tried to do the right thing in a hopeless situation. That is now documented. His good name is now part of the record. My mother always had faith in him. She passed away believing everyone else thought he was a coward who left his family. I just wish she could have known what was true. Perhaps she did know. In the ways that truly count, she knew the man she was with. She knew his character no matter what anyone else said. Nathan's voice was gentle. You have brought honor to them both, Emily. By looking for what was true, by not settling for the easy story. That requires great courage. They were quiet for a moment. The morning light warmed the balcony. Far below, the city was alive with noise and movement. People heading to their jobs, living their days, and creating their own futures, piece by piece. I have been thinking about an idea, Emily said, carefully folding the letter. I want to start a foundation with my father's name. It would be for families who are also dealing with missing loved ones, especially when it is tied to criminal groups. It would offer money for investigations, help for the families, and push for new laws. That is a very large project. I know, but I have the means now, and I have your help, and a network, plus I know how to handle systems that are broken for most people. Emily looked directly at Nathan. Will you do this with me? Absolutely. We can set up the legal structure, find some seed money, and put together a board. Nathan's face was serious. The Thomas Carter Foundation. I like the sound of that. He lost his life trying to uncover wrongdoing. I owe it to him to make his name mean something good, something that helps people in the same position. He would be so proud of you, Emily. Not just of the foundation, but of all of it. The way you faced the truth, decided to look ahead, and did not let bitterness take over. A small smile formed on Emily's lips. I learned from the best. My dad chose to do right when it was risky. My mom chose to keep going when she was worn out. And you? She paused, her eyes locking with Nathan's, who chose a new path, even when it cost you everything. I had a good reason, Nathan said, his voice holding a kindness she had grown used to. Someone taught me that there are many ways to be strong, that compassion is not a flaw, and that we are not doomed to make the same mistakes. What they had now was something neither of them could have predicted. It was not love, their history. The difference in their ages and positions made that impossible. It was something more profound than friendship. They were true partners, connected by what they had been through, and a deep respect for one another. They made each other think, gave each other strength, and motivated each other to improve. Marcus stood at the office entrance. Apologies for the interruption, Nathan. The lawyers are ready for your testimony prep. And Emily, your meeting with the community board starts in 30 minutes. A real job with a real calendar, Emily noted with a faint grin. It is taking some time to adjust. It beats the other option, Nathan answered. Go to your meeting. I will take care of the lawyers. We can talk about it tonight over dinner at Luigi's. I am paying this time. You do not need to. I would like to. You have helped me more than enough. It is my turn to treat you once in a while. After Emily was gone, Nathan stayed on the balcony, reflecting on the last 6 months and the path that led them to this point. The blast that was meant to kill him had instead given him a new life. Emily Carter, the housekeeper who rushed into the flames, had sparked a transformation he never imagined. The coming trial was going to be tough. He would face hard questions, intense examination, and public opinion. Parts of his history would be brought to light, picked apart, and condemned. Yet for the first time as an adult, Nathan was facing a challenge without threats or force. He was facing it with the truth, taking ownership of his decisions, and trying to create something positive. The feeling was frightening. It was freeing. It was genuine. 1 week later, the trial started. Emily was in the courtroom while the prosecution laid out its case against David Chen, Mrs. Chen, and Richard Kane. The process was orderly and impersonal, turning the horror of that night into a collection of facts, dates, and exhibits. When Emily took the stand, she recounted everything without hesitation. the blast, the inferno, choosing to go back for Nathan, and the discoveries made in the weeks after. The defense lawyers attempted to discredit her, hinting at hidden agendas or prepared answers, but Emily was unshakable. "I rescued Nathan Cole because it was the right thing to do," she said with conviction. "I remained in his life by my own choice. I was not forced or tricked. My decisions were mine alone, based on what I believe in." Nathan took the stand the following day, admitting to parts of his past that were now public knowledge, but he did not make excuses. "I have done things I am not proud of," he admitted to the court. "I have worked in the fuzzy edges of the law, but I am working to fix that, to create legitimate companies that can operate in the open." The trial took 3 weeks. Ultimately, the jury found all three guilty. David Chen was sentenced to 25 years for his crimes, including those connected to Thomas Carter. Mrs. Chen got 12 years. Richard Kane, who had offered more cooperation to the state, was given 8 years. Emily found no joy in their sentences, just a profound sorrow for all the senseless loss. Her father's life, the long years of grief, and the pattern of vengeance that almost took Nathan as well. But now it was done. It was finally, completely finished. A warm Chicago summer arrived, bringing with it long, sunny days. The Thomas Carter Foundation had its official opening ceremony, drawing families with missing relatives, supporters of victims, and local leaders. Emily stood at the lectern, gazing at a crowd that knew her story because they were experiencing their own. "My father vanished 8 years ago," she started. "For almost all that time, he was seen as a man who simply walked away. But it was not his choice. He was stolen from us for attempting to do what was right. This organization was created so that no other family has to seek the truth, or demand justice, or fight for their loved one's memory all by themselves." The audience clapped loudly. Nathan watched from the rear of the room, his face filled with unmistakable pride. Standing near him, Marcus gave a nod of support. This is what real change looked like. It was not about erasing what happened, but about constructing something worthwhile from the wreckage. After the event, Emily and Nathan strolled by the lake, soaking in the summer air. Sailboats drifted on the water, and kids were playing in the park, their happy shouts floating on the gentle wind. "You were wonderful today," Nathan said. "Your father would be so incredibly proud of you." "I hope so. I hope that wherever he is, whatever comes after, he is aware that I uncovered the truth, that I never abandoned him. He is aware, and your mother is aware. Both of them are proud of the person you have become." Emily paused her walk, turning toward the lake. The sun was going down, coloring the water in hues of orange and gold. "Do you ever reflect on that night? About how much would have changed if I had chosen differently? Every single day. If you had fled, I would probably be gone. David's entire plan would have worked. Your search for answers about your father would still be open. And Nathan stopped. I would have lost the opportunity to become a different person than I was before. Do you have any regrets? About the changes, the restructuring, and giving up the old ways? Sometimes it is more difficult, less profitable, and much more complex. But regrets? No." Nathan looked into her eyes. "You taught me that there are many kinds of strength and many ways to define success. I am now building something that I am not ashamed of, something that does not need me to always watch for betrayal. That is worth much more than all the money or power I used to have. So what happens now? After everything, the trial, the foundation, and the business changes, what is next for us?" Nathan smiled. "We will keep building. We will keep trying to be better today than we were yesterday. We can honor the people we lost by living with an integrity they would have understood." He pointed toward the sunset, the city lights, and the huge lake in front of them. "We live, Emily, fully and honestly, without the burden of old questions weighing us down." Emily nodded, and a sense of calm settled in her heart. It was perhaps peace, or maybe acceptance. She came to Chicago to get answers about her father's disappearance. She found them. Those answers, but also a new direction she never expected, and relationships that reshaped her views on courage, fairness, and second chances. The fire meant to kill Nathan Cole had instead cleansed them both. It stripped away all the lies and brought the truth out into the open. They came out of the fire different people, bonded by something more powerful than the secrets they once kept. Walking back to the city, with lights starting to appear in the twilight, Emily sensed her father was with her. It was like a gentle breeze, no longer a ghost from the past, but a quiet strength. He had attempted to be honorable in a terrible circumstance. Now, his daughter was following his example, day by day, creating a life that respected his legacy while being uniquely hers. On that November night, everyone fled the explosion except for the housekeeper who pulled the city's most powerful criminal from the flames. That single decision altered two destinies, sending them down roads neither could have foreseen. It was not the conclusion either of them had expected. It was more. It was genuine. It was a life they built together. And that was everything. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.